The average person spends 40 years of their life chasing a phantom. They call it the American dream, but in the halls of the Federal Reserve and the boardrooms of Wall Street, it has a much more clinical name. The debt-based monetary system. You've been told that money is a reward for your labor, that if you work hard, save your pennies, and play by the rules, the math will eventually work in your favor. This is the first lie. In our modern economy, money is not a reward for work. Money is debt. Every dollar in your wallet or digits on your screen was birthed into existence the moment someone, government, a corporation, or a consumer, borrowed it. If all debts were paid today, the money supply would vanish. There would be no wealth left, only a void. This is the invisible trap. We live in an ecosystem that requires your perpetual indebtedness to remain solvent. The system doesn't want you to be poor. The poor have no credit. But it absolutely forbids you from being truly free. It needs you in the golden middle, earning enough to service the interest, but never enough to own your time. You feel it, don't you? That low frequency hum of anxiety when the bills arrive. That nagging realization that despite your raises, your promotions, and your side hustles, you are running faster just to stay in the same place. It's because you are fighting against a tide designed to erode your purchasing power. We are taught to fear the crash, but the crash is a mercy. The real horror is the grind, the slow, systematic extraction of human life force through the mechanism of interest. You aren't just paying for a house or a car. You are paying a life tax to the architects of the ledger. Tonight, we peel back the skin of the global economy. We aren't looking at spreadsheets. We are looking at the necropsy of a system designed to keep you productive, predictable, and perpetually owed. Welcome to the invisible debt trap. To understand how we became a nation of indentured servants in suits, we have to look back to a quiet Sunday in August 1971. Before this moment, money had a tether. It was anchored to something physical, something finite, gold. When Richard Nixon, temporarily, suspended the convertibility of the US dollar into gold, he didn't just change a policy. He changed the nature of reality. He severed the link between human effort and the supply of currency. Suddenly, money was no longer a commodity. It became a decree. Before 1971, if a government wanted to spend money it didn't have, it had to find more gold or raise taxes, both of which are politically painful. After 1971, the constraints vanished. The government discovered it could simply print the difference. But there's a catch. You can't create something from nothing without a cost. That cost is inflation, which is effectively a hidden tax on everyone who holds the currency. But the true genius, or the true malice of this transition, was how it re-engineered the American household. In the 1950s and 60s, a single income could buy a home, a car, and a future. When the dollar was decoupled from gold, the purchasing power began to bleed out. To maintain their standard of living, families didn't demand better monetary policy. They adapted, first by sending both parents into the workforce. When that wasn't enough, they turned to the newly birthed industry of consumer credit. The credit card wasn't a convenience. It was a survival mechanism for a middle class whose wages were no longer keeping up with the cost of a debased currency. We replaced wealth with credit. We stopped owning things and started renting them from banks, paying for the privilege with the hours of our lives we haven't even lived yet. The system was built this way because a population that owns its assets is difficult to control. A population that owes its soul to the bank for the next 30 years is the most disciplined workforce in history. They cannot strike. They cannot quit. They cannot revolt. They have a mortgage. To navigate the trap, you must first see the teeth. Most people view debt as a personal failure or a simple financial tool. In reality, it is the gravity of our economic solar system. It pulls everything toward the center, toward the institutions that have the unique, legalized power to create credit out of thin air. Consider the concept of fractional reserve banking. When you deposit $1 into a bank, that money doesn't sit in a vault. Through the alchemy of modern regulation, the bank is permitted to lend out the vast majority of that deposit to someone else. That borrower then spends the money, and it ends up in another bank where it is lent out again. Through this cycle, your original $1,000 can blossom into $10,000 of new money circulating in the economy. This is the expansion of the money supply. But here is the structural rot. The bank creates the principal, but it does not create the interest. If every person and every government tried to pay off their total debt tomorrow, it would be mathematically impossible. The money to pay the interest literally does not exist. The only way to pay the interest on yesterday's debt is to issue even more debt today. It is a global Ponzi scheme baked into the very software of civilization. This creates a permanent state of scarcity. We are told we live in an age of abundance, yet everyone is desperate. Why? Because the system is designed to be a game of musical chairs. Since there is never enough money to cover both the principal and the interest, some participants must fail. Some businesses must go bankrupt. Some families must lose their homes. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. It ensures that labor remains cheap, and that people remain in competition with one another rather than the system itself. Then there is the inflationary tax. Because the money supply is constantly expanding to service the interest, the value of each individual dollar shrinks. This is why a candy bar that cost 5 cents in your grandfather's time costs $2 today. Inflation is the most sophisticated form of theft ever devised. It doesn't take money from your pocket. It takes the value of the money while it's still in your pocket. It punishes the savers, the people who play by the old rules, and it rewards the debtors at the very top. The elite understand that in a devaluing currency, you don't want to hold cash. You want to hold hard assets, real estate, monopolies, and infrastructure purchased with borrowed money that you will pay back later with cheaper dollars. The trap is simple. The majority works for the currency which is dying, while the minority uses the currency to buy the assets which are living. By the time the average person realizes the game is rigged, they have already traded their most valuable asset, time, for a pile of depreciating paper. True wealth is not a number in a bank account. It is a measurement of autonomy. It is the distance between your daily requirements and your need to sell your labor to meet them. The architects of the system do not hustle. They do not trade hours for dollars. They build or acquire systems of capture. If you want to exit the invisible debt trap, you must stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a sovereign. The path to sovereignty is built on 3 pillars: asymmetry, compounding, and asset hardness. The rejection of linear growth. The trap relies on you believing in linear growth. Work 5% harder to get a 5% raise. But inflation is eating 7%. You are losing. The wealthy seek asymmetric risks and scenarios where the downside is capped, but the upside is mathematically uncapped. This is the difference between being an employee linear and being an owner exponential. The weaponization of time. The system uses compounding against you via high-interest consumer debt. To flip the script, you must use time leverage. Wealth is not built by timing the market, but by time in the market. However, you cannot compound if you are fragile. This requires capital discipline. Most people increase their lifestyle as their income rises. This is lifestyle creep, the velvet lining of the trap. The sovereign maintains a low burn rate, creating a surplus that acts as fuel for the compounding engine. Seeking hardness in a world of infinite printing, you must seek the finite. This is why the wealthy flock to luxury real estate, fine art, and increasingly, Bitcoin or gold. They are looking for hard assets, things that cannot be summoned into existence by a central bank memo. Wealth is not about having more money. It is about owning things that the system cannot dilute. You must move your value out of the current, the currency, and into the reservoir, the asset. The goal is to reach escape velocity, the point where the yield from your assets exceeds your cost of existence. At that moment, you are no longer a participant in the debt cycle. You are an observer. The system will continue to grind, the debt will continue to swell, and the masses will continue to run. But you will have stepped off the treadmill. You don't beat the house by playing better. You beat the house by becoming the owner of the casino. The most successful prison is the one whose bars are made of numbers and norms. Now that you see the architecture, you will notice it everywhere. You will see it in the skyscrapers that dominate the skyline, monuments to the interest payments of the working class. You will see it in the frantic energy of the morning commute, a mass migration of debt, servants rushing to provide the labor that keeps the ledger balanced. The system is not broken. It is performing exactly as intended. It was never meant to make you wealthy. It was meant to make you useful. It was designed to channel the brilliance and energy of billions of human beings into a narrow funnel that drips into the reservoirs of the few. There is a heavy realization that comes with this clarity. You cannot fix the global monetary system. You cannot vote away the fundamental math of interest and debasement. The machine is too large, too old, and too hungry. But you can choose your relationship to it. You can remain a component, a reliable unit of consumption that trades 30 years of vitality for a suburban illusion. Or you can become an architect, someone who understands that in a world of infinite debt, the only true currency is time, and the only true safety is ownership. The trap is invisible because it is comfortable. It is the air you breathe and the dreams you are taught to chase. But once you understand that the dollar is a debt and your labor is the collateral, the comfort vanishes. You are left with a choice that no one can make for you. You can go back to sleep, believing that the numbers on your screen represent security. Or you can begin the slow, disciplined work of extracting yourself from the machinery. The exit is not a shortcut. It is a siege. It requires a level of discipline that the modern world is designed to erode. It requires you to value your freedom more than your status. The system survives on your participation. It thrives on your distraction, but it trembles at your independency. You now see the trap. The question is no longer how it works. The question is, how much of your life are you willing to trade to stay inside it? The ledger is waiting.